The next thing we're going to cover actually pertains to us as accountants and then as we interface with the IRS is just touching real briefly because, as they're working on trying to shore up security, they have new, it's called two-factor authentication security measures they're unveiling. And we'll talk about what those are and what we can expect. Two-factor authentication, they usually just refer to that because I just kind of funny. It's like in the IRS, we have so many different abbreviations and acronyms, and in the IT world, it's almost as bad or worse. So they refer to that as 2FA. Whenever you see that now, you'll be like, I know what that is. It's two-factor authentication. They also, in some cases, call it MFA, meaning multi-factor, more than two, authentication. So what really is that to begin with? It's basically extra security, of course. It requires a password, but they're saying, passwords just kind of don't cut it anymore. It's too easy to figure those out, possibly. So they're going to ask you to verify some sort of unique information that only you know. That's what they mean. It's a two-way, at least, of authenticating somebody. Okay, yeah, you know the password, but do you know this? That's kind of what two-factor is. So if we say, okay, but what is a factor? Factor can be what you know, so it's like knowledge that you have. So what would some examples of that be? Some things that you may know could be, of course, your password. It could be some sort of little piece of knowledge. It could be anything that's within that realm. What you have, so something you own, well, that could be like a driver's license. It could be some sort of a hardware, physical token, something physical that you have. Or a factor could also be who you are. So what they mean by inheritance, okay, what is something as to who you are? It could be a biometric. It could be like a fingerprint. It could be a retinal scan, something that is part of who you are. So something in your knowledge, something you possess, or something, that's part of who you are, like a fingerprint scan is factors. So if we look at, because of the fact that most of the users use the same password for everything, if we say, security exists, isn't a password good enough? What about security questions? I mean, that's a good thing, right? These are all the knowledge thing. The problem is there's too much public knowledge. And I've seen these tests. A security question isn't actually much better than a password. If you're like, what was the hometown you grew up in? They can do Google searches nowadays, and if you have that posted anywhere at some point, or there's pieces of information you can fill in just directly from the internet itself. Means it's really not all that much better than a password because there's too much public knowledge that's available. So we have to go a step beyond and say, where else can we authenticate somebody that maybe is beyond that security question and maybe is beyond a password? So some of the common multi-factor techniques is SMS. Now, we refer to that generically as text. So text messaging, SMS in the technical realm is what it's called. Email is one way that we can do that. So you have probably already experienced this when you're like logging into something, you're like, okay, we're going to send you an email and you got to click on that to confirm it's you. That's what they're trying to do is one other or a two-factor authentication technique. What about a phone call? Now, that sometimes doesn't work so well, but that's another way that they authenticate somebody. Or a one-time password. That's where they send you a password that's only good right at that moment or for a little bit of time. And then you use that password and then you log in and you change your password. You may have experienced already two-factor authentication without realizing that's what you're doing is a little enhanced security for whoever is asking. Hardware dongle. That's like a little, I actually many years ago briefly worked for a really, really big Fortune 500 company doing some tax work for them, and they sent me a little hardware piece that would every 60 seconds come up with a new number. And so I would have to use that to prove it was me. Somehow, fascinates me, some of the technology. It would know off of that number when I logged into their servers that it was me. Could be a phone app. This is a way that it can say, okay, first of all, that phone is something you own. So that's just like a driver's license. A cell phone is something you own. And it's working with maybe a combination of a password and then sending something to your phone. So what will it do? It's going to require you to register. And in that registration process, you're registering as you, as the person, not as your company. You're going to go in and through an email address, you may have to know, these are things you're going to need to know. Your social security number, they're going to ask what was your filing status and address on your own personal last filed return, because they're like, okay, we're getting to areas that only you should know. This isn't maybe something that somebody else should know, but just in case, they may also ask for a personal account number. Now, this is where we might start getting a little nervous and go, wait a second, why do they want to know my credit card number? Why do they want to know my mortgage account number or my second mortgage or my home equity line of credit? They're not retaining this data. All they're going to be doing is using this for matching. They may want a car loan ID. That may be one thing they can use to match it. They may want credit card information, but by the way, it can't be American Express. It can't be a debit card or one issued in your name by a company, because here's what they're doing, honestly. They're going to be taking credit report information, and on that credit report, if it pops up with a credit card account number or ending of the account number, if it pops up with a home mortgage or car loan account number, they're going to say, you know what, this is something that only our person should know, because this really isn't like you can Google search this information. So that's what they're doing, is saying we are going to put in a much more stringent way of when you register, proving this really, really is you beyond any doubt. They're going to make sure that you have a mobile phone that's accessible, and your name actually has to be associated with that phone. They're not just going to send this to a phone without you saying, you know, my name is on the account. So landlines, virtual lines, or pay-as-you-go aren't eligible for this, because they won't be able to say, yes, this really is your phone. Also, if you have a credit freeze through Equifax, that has to be temporarily lifted, or they can't use data to help to authenticate your information. As you're going through the registration, they'll give you a one-time access code that they'll email you to you as you begin, and it's valid just for 15 minutes, so that they're using about all these different things that we talked about, trying to verify it's you. Or they can send it to your mobile phone, but that's only valid for 10 minutes. So you get this access code, you kind of start this registration process. You're going to say, okay, I can prove this is me because I know things about myself that nobody else should know. Or if you really don't have access to this phone that is in your name, you might be able to go ahead and do it by mail, and that's going to be mailed to you within, and valid for 30 days. So after you go through and prove that it's you and you are registered for it, then you can go over to the other side and start using e-services. What they'll do is generate a unique code every single time that you log in, a 6-digit code. It can be sent to your mobile phone for convenience to an app. If they send it to your mobile phone, it's valid for 10 minutes. Or you can just generate it via the app, the IRS To Go app, and that's valid for 30 seconds. So it's trying to balance between convenience and security. So that's a little bit of what we're to expect, and we're going to start seeing measures like this rolled out more and more as bigger companies are trying to get ahead of cybersecurity as well. So yeah, it may be that it's an annoyance in a sense, but how do we go about again, these extra little steps we take? Yeah, every time I log in now, I gotta go to the app or get this code. It's all for the sake of security of that information. So maybe view it a little bit differently. It's to protect, to make sure that you aren't going to have to report to the IRS, oh, by the way, I had a breach of data. So they're looking at it from their side. They're trying to protect it so nobody can log in using your information to get taxpayer data off of those that are tied to you under your power of attorney. So yes, these are all to protect.